They removed me from their world with a silence so complete it felt rehearsed. No argument, no warning, just the subtle shifting of people who no longer wish to acknowledge your existence. I stood there for a moment, watching familiar faces turn into a wall of indifferent expressions, and I realized something simple. Exile doesn't always require distance. Sometimes it's just the absence of recognition. The wilderness I entered afterward wasn't hostile. It was worse, it was indifferent. The air hung cold and heavy, as if time had thickened. Trees rose like ancient sentinels, their branches forming a geometry that suggested meaning but offered none. The ground carried the faint memory of footsteps not my own, long vanished into the soil. Nothing welcomed me. Nothing rejected me. I was simply another presence drifting into a space that did not ask my name. Shapes lingered at the edge of my vision, steady, watchful, patient. Not hunters, not guardians. Just beings that belonged to the realm far better than I did. They studied my posture, my breath, the way I held myself when stripped of context. Their attention wasn't threatening. It was observational, as if they were weighing whether the stillness inside me was genuine or merely performed. So I let the world press against me without resistance. I let the cold settle into my bones until my thoughts slowed to a disciplined pulse. The noise of old identities, old expectations, old emotional reflexes fell away one layer at a time. What remained wasn't confidence or defiance. It was a quiet neutrality, the kind forged only when nothing external agrees to hold you upright. Night didn't fall so much as it thickened. The watchers circled at a respectful distance, shifting with a choreography that seemed instinctive, almost ceremonial. They weren't circling me. They were circling the space where I had chosen to stand unmoved. And their movements taught me something the world of people never had. There is a form of respect reserved for those who do not flinch at the nature of things. Hours passed without measure. In that darkness, I learned the feel of my own mind, stripped of familiar narratives. I learned how small fear becomes when you stop feeding it with imagined catastrophes. I learned how strange it is to discover that solitude, when embraced rather than resisted, sharpens perception instead of dimming it. By the time the first pale line of dawn slipped between the trees, I understood that nothing in that place had been testing my strength. Strength is loud and easily disrupted. What they were watching for was steadiness, an inner stillness that does not crack when the world stops offering comfort. When daylight finally revealed the watchers clearly, they approached with the calm assurance of creatures who had reached a conclusion. They didn't bow, follow, or demand anything. They simply walked beside me, acknowledging that I now carried the same quiet sovereignty they recognized within themselves. I left that wilderness not triumphant, not restored, but clarified. The person who had been abandoned no longer existed, not because the world erased me, but because the silence allowed me to shed what I no longer needed. I didn't return as a leader or a survivor. Those roles rely on comparison. I returned as something more precise, a self no longer shaped by the approval or absence of others. In the end, being cast out was not a punishment. It was a distillation. And what remained after the distillation was someone the world could no longer misunderstand. Follow for more.